Good morning, everyone. It's a thrill to be able to say that live and in person. I've missed being in a room with an actual audience. Let me tell you, you all look good here in person. And those of you watching online, you look good too. My name is Hope Knight, and I am President and CEO of Empire State Development, the state's economic development agency. Welcome to the first session of the day and the first live panel of the forum. I want to introduce you to someone whom we are honored to have as our moderator for this morning's panel, Ruth Hassell-Thompson. You know, today's theme for the forum is Roadmap to Success. Ruth Hassell-Thompson has truly forged a path for women and minorities across the state. She has led the way for so many of us. She has dedicated herself to public service. She remains deeply committed to her local community and New York, and she is committed to creating opportunities for all New Yorkers. Ruth started her career as a pediatric nurse and substance abuse counselor. She then served as executive director of Westchester Minority Contractors Association. She worked in the private sector before being elected to public office, first in Mount Vernon, and then for over 15 years in the state Senate. She now serves as special advisor for policy and community affairs of New York State Homes and Community Renewal. Please welcome Ruth Hassell-Thompson.
We're here to explore with you with three bright and shining stars that are going to make an extraordinary difference to the way in which we do business in the state of New York and how we ensure that minority and women get good footing and the opportunity. Thank you. I had to wait for these. My eyes. There you go. Now I can really see you back there. Create the opportunities for us to have equal opportunity, DEI, in its best sense in the state of New York. And that DEI is diversity, equity, and inclusion. And that's what the state of New York is about. And our governor has sent forth the word that she has every intention of being supportive of minority and women having opportunities to be a part of building back New York. Better, faster, compassionately, but efficiently. I always believe that women are efficient. I won't say in a comparative, but you understand. Let me introduce our extraordinary panel today. To my immediate left is Ms. Doreen. Now, you already heard about who I am, so we'll start with Doreen Harris, who is President and CEO of NYSERDA. Ms. Harris has held public and private sector leadership roles, advancing clean energy projects and engineering companies for more than 20 years. During her 10 years of public service, she has held executive, technical, and policy positions at NYSERDA, most recently as Vice President of Large-Scale Renewables. Before embarking on a career in public service, Ms. Harris spent more than a decade in the energy sector, serving in management and engineering roles. She began her career at Alcoa, Advanced Technologies, and Optimization Technologies and Engineering roles associated with Global Water Technologies, Inc. There she led a multi-year initiative to develop and commercialize energy savings and water treatment technologies. I could go on and on, but I think you get the idea that she is well suited for the position that she now has given responsibility for. To her left is Jeanette Moy, Acting Commissioner for the Office of General Services. Commissioner Moy brings to OGS over a decade of executive experience, transforming and modernizing public and nonprofit institutions by focusing on customer service, improving technology and physical spaces, and fostering cultures of collaboration, transparency, and innovation. Most recently, she has served as Executive Vice President and COO for Public Health Solutions, an organization committed to reducing health inequities in New York City. During her tenure at PHS, she strengthened its corporate functions, developed new service models, and navigated operational services in response to COVID-19 pandemic. In 2011 to 2015, Acting Commissioner Moy served as the Chief Strategy Officer at the Brooklyn Public Library. During her tenure, she established the library's 5-year plan. Again, leadership demonstrated and successful. To her left, and last but not least, of course, is Hope Knight. I love the word hope, because that's what she brings to her post. She's the Chief Operating Officer of the Upper Manhattan Employment Empowerment Zone, UMEZ, and she was responsible for the day-to-day operation for this corporation. Prior to her current role, Ms. Knight was Vice President at Morgan Stanley in the Institutional Equities Division. She's also a senior staff member at the New York City Department of General Services. She was a senior consultant at Accenture in strategies, services under the Financial Institutions Group. She was also a senior staff member at the New York City in the Department of General Services. She holds a bachelor's degree from Marymount College, rah-rah Marymount, an MBA from the University of Chicago's Graduate School of Business. Ms. Knight serves as the chair of the Marymount College Board of Trustees, a member of the board of True Fund Financial, Greenmean America, Carver Bank Community Development Corp., Morgan Stanley New Markets, North Country School, and Robin Wilson Home. All of these women have demonstrated in their past lives the leadership that will take our MWBE program to heights that even we cannot yet imagine. So let's start with our panel. And let's ask our panel a few questions, and because we also have a virtual audience, those of you who were not able to be with us in person today, we also want to welcome you and to let you know that we're happy that you're out there somewhere in the hinterlands watching and tuning in to what we're doing here today in Albany. And be assured that, that the fact that you're not here does not mean that you're absent. It just means that you're not in this space. But this is a part of the new hybrid and technology that the pandemic has called for. But it has demonstrated our capacity to continue to reach out beyond the walls of Albany's, what we call the Ivy Tower up here, and be able to touch lives across the state and to ensure that you are included in the discussion. So welcome to our virtual group. Starting with our questions, and I will designate a panelist for each of the questions. but I may not ask the same question of each of you. I may ask you, what is your opinion of the panelists before you, and see how would you do it differently, enhance it, or certainly support it. Our first question will go to Doreen, since I know the least about you. Can you share more about your role and why you think women in leadership are crucial to New York State's economy and its success?
Of course, and good morning, everyone. It's such a pleasure to be here today with this panel and in this room to talk about this important topic. I've really been looking forward to this, so this is a good day for me. So my job, just in case NYSERDA is not a known entity to everyone in the room, my job is to change our fundamental way of life and our economy for the better. And by that, I mean my job is to fight climate change. And my job is to deploy technologies, resources, and solutions to that end in a way that benefits all New Yorkers, in a way that I would say change our lives for the better, and certainly the world for the better. And so when I think about that goal, that overarching goal that is indeed the goal of NYSERDA, I think about it from two dimensions. You'll hear about me as a professional at some point, I'm sure, in this panel, but with respect to our mission and our job, there are two things that I think about. I think about the people at NYSERDA. We need to touch every New Yorker in a beneficial manner. And in order to do so, we need the people of NYSERDA to represent the people of the state of New York. It is true that we can best serve all New Yorkers if we, again, look, act, and live like all New Yorkers. So one primary goal of mine in leading NYSERDA is to ensure that we bring forth the people that represent the diversity of our state. And I would say the greatness of our state as a general matter. So happy to talk about that if interested in more detail. But then when we think about the work that we are all doing together as New Yorkers, it is true also that we need to think about every dollar we spend, every program we build, and every initiative that we launch through that same lens, which is to ensure that our work is advanced in an equitable, a deliberate, and I would say a broadly beneficial manner. So to today's panel discussion topic, we'll talk about how we advance work that is equitable. And that is really where the concept and the approach with respect to MWBE work and generally to our work in equity would apply. We have a requirement under New York's Climate Act that 40% of the benefits of our investments accrue to disadvantaged communities. And so that puts an entirely new lens on our work. And what we have done specifically is to leverage our buying power to push those objectives into the work that is done at our request. So when we buy, when we instruct, when we build regulations and/or policies, we do so in a way that motivates those same principles in every decision that is made, in every investment that is made, and beyond. So I think about it through those two lenses, and I think about it also from the perspective of the long-term benefits that it'll bring as to, I would say, a different, a more equitable, and a more beneficial future for all of us.
Commissioner Moy, how do you respond to that? Obviously in a supportive way, because I know that a lot of that is your philosophy too, but what can you add to that?
Absolutely.
In terms of your agency?
So the Office of General Services is a support agency for every other. And so we do the real estate, we manage the facilities, we do the design and construction for many agencies, and we also have the Chief Procurement Officer. So we're setting up the contracts. We are helping to facilitate and give guidance to agencies, and not just the state, but municipalities and nonprofits. Nonprofits like ones that I used to work at, the city, when I worked in the city of New York, we rely on OGS contracts. And so when we do contracting well, it has a ripple effect, because when you set up a good contract and you help people guide to find the right services and the right partners, that effect trickles out across the state. And so, you know, particularly, I've been thinking a lot about my role coming into it as the first woman of color that's leading this organization. And for me, it makes a lot of the work and this topic very personal, right? There are a lot of barriers in terms of access across all different disciplines. What rooms you walk into, who welcomes you into it, whether or not you see yourself competing, and how to get the right credentials that allow you to be able to go from being a subcontractor to being a prime. And those areas of responsibility that I oversee, I like to bring in my vantage point and my lived experience in all aspects of it. So when we talk about MWBE contracting, it's something that's incredibly personal to me as an individual, and it helps me think about how our organization needs to run and function. Obviously, stewardship is really important. We do have state assets, but they are amazing, incredible, wonderfully competent individuals that are leading companies that need to just figure out how to navigate, make it in through the door, and compete. And there are great contracts that are out there that we oversee. There's a lot of money that's coming in because of infrastructure. There's significant things that the agencies need to do just to keep the doors open. And so when you have the viewpoint of thinking, how can I ensure that competition is fair, that folks have access, that's a primary focus for our agency.
Let me first back up and thank you for your response to that. But let me also back up and apologize. You know, I referred to you as Commissioner Moy. I referred to you as Doreen. Let me apologize. I'm going to call everybody by their first name if that's appropriate. I just couldn't remember your first name at the moment, but no disrespect to you. Oh. No, I'm very careful about that, because too often, again, that's a part of that workplace respect and regard that sometimes we overlook, and we don't mean any harm, but people need to know that we did not mean any harm. So I wanted to just make you aware of that, Doreen. And thank you again. Hope the next question is for you.
Okay.
This is a biggie. Do you think women have a different approach to business, or perhaps have different incentives for starting and running a business?
I do. So I've been involved in a number of not-for-profits that have focused specifically on women. And you know, this is sort of general that I'm going to propose, but I think there are probably three buckets of reasons why women start businesses. You know, the first is women find a passion and marry that with a commercial purpose. So they've been able to pursue their passion and make a living out of it. So that's one. The second one is you will have a woman who needs a flexible lifestyle. And so needing to pursue an opportunity to find this flexible lifestyle. And then thirdly, you have women who are working for others, either selling a product or service, and then they've decided to go out on their own and start a business to do that for themselves. And so I think that motivation is definitely a little different than what men have in terms of motivation with respect to starting a business. And so it really brings with it a different level of enthusiasm and motivation to really pursue these opportunities that they have decided to put forth as a commercial enterprise.
Doreen, how do you feel about that?
Well, let me tell you a story.
Okay.
It's a short one, I promise.
I love stories.
Let me promise.
Anybody that knows me, I do everything by stories.
So my background is in engineering, which means that not that long ago, or at least it feels not that long ago, I was sitting in an engineering classroom at the University of Rochester, go New York, with about 75 men and about 5 women, pursuing my degree in chemical engineering. And I actually met my husband in that room, so again, I would consider that a double plus. But with that said, the fact that you are a small number of people, you know, your cluster is very small compared to the bigger number of a different gender in the room. Until you experience that, you don't actually know how it feels. To feel as though you are somehow different and somehow less credible because of that difference. That experience has persisted for me in ways that not only influence my thinking, but also my actions moving forward. Because what I have come to see after that, that time of 4 years of really understanding my fundamental differences with my then classmates, it allows me to see not only how that can influence behavior, but further, as I have proceeded in my career, I've seen really the tremendous value that diversity can bring to any organization. And so I broaden this now to say, when I think about diversity, I think about the incredible benefits that it brings. I love nothing more than to hear different points of view. I love nothing more than to have a dialogue in which different views are represented. And I never, ever want anyone to feel like I felt in that room in any action that I take now leading an organization. And so when I think about what women bring, or people of color bring, or different gender, gender preferences bring to a room, I see that as a massive benefit. I see the product as being so beneficial, both with respect to what it actually achieves, but also the contributions that people bring and the feelings that are engendered through that collaboration. So really, we are all the product of our history. And I think as we look forward, I think we can all be very deliberate about bringing forth those benefits that I just described.
Thank you both. Jeanette?
May I add, it's interesting. I think about this a lot of times when you're applying for a job or when you're going for a contract, right? And whether you're a woman or you're a person of color, when you're just thinking about what you apply for, they say women tend to look through a resume, they tend to look through a job description, and they look for if there are 10 items, do I hit all 10 before I apply? And that comes also when you're applying or responding to an RFP, right? You want to make sure you can do every last aspect of it. It's important. You want to be qualified. But I think, you want to make sure also that you're not putting yourself forward for something that you would actually be exceptional at. How do you get into that door? And so I think about, when you first decide that you're going to step and lead an organization, or you want to build a new product, or you want to bring it to market, how scary that can be for an individual kind of stepping up. And advice that I would give to anyone in this room is to just ask, right? Apply for it. Get your company's name out there. And if you lose this bid, there will be a next one, right? And I just had a conversation this morning, which we were talking about, with a architecture firm, which has been a MWBE with the state for 5 years, and is looking forward to getting contracts, but doesn't know how to start getting a part as a subrecipient. How can I be a subcontractor? How can I be a competitive on an outstanding bid? How do I insert myself into that process? I can't hit those 10 elements, but I can hit 3 of them pretty damn well. So what room do I need to be in, and how do I connect? And I think those pieces are just really important to make sure that you're never not stepping forward in places where you can fill. And the one thing I'll say, and hope it really resonates to me about why some people are uniquely qualified, especially as a woman. And we were talking about being mothers, right? Or just in general. I can think about running my household, right? So how do I make sure that my house is, that the roof is going to be repaired? How do I make sure my kids are going to class? What are the million pieces of multitasking that are taking place at the same time I'm trying to go to work or get my education? That is a very inherent, and I don't want to sound too biased here, But I do think that it is something that women do exceptionally well. And when women step into leadership roles, that sort of natural remembering of, okay, well, how do I keep all these pieces going? And you don't want those incredible competencies to be stopped because you're not sure if you should be in the room. And that's where, you know, if I were to give a piece of advice for everyone, is never be scared of who's in the room and who's not, because you might be the first, but you certainly won't be the last.
Good point.
Well, that segues into the next question. I'm going to let you take this one first, Jeanette. The sub-theme for today is roadmap to success. How would you describe your roadmap to success, and what do you think was the one or other contributing factors to making that happen?
So I started over my career realizing what I'm really good at. And what I'm really good at is I love sticky situations and problem solving. You know, loved Tetris as a kid, you know, enjoy Sudoku, whatever is the piece. And I love going into organizations where there's great opportunity, and I love making changes. I always think there's an opportunity to be better, to find great talent around you, and to have a camaraderie to build and do great things. And so for me, it was understanding who I was and what I bring at the table. The best advice I ever got from someone was, when you're sitting at a table, you're there for a reason. Not everyone in the room is there for your reason. So even if you're not the most important person at the table, be there and own that space. So if you're working on a policy area, you're there because you're you know, a traffic engineer, or you're, you know, an architect, whatever those pieces, that's what you're bringing to the table, and know it inside and out, because no one will know it the way that you know it, and always add value. And so, you know, I think when I think about when I sit at a table, that's what I remember. And when I think about how I bring forward my past experiences to the next one, I'm always trying to remember, well, this is, if it's a problem, how do I apply a past way that I fixed it into a situation that I'm in today? And you think about that when you're responding to an RFP, right? You know, I might not have that specific qual, but I remember that type of issue. I remember a way in which this work that I did before applies into this area, the way that the team that I have, they apply to this specific piece. And it's always good to not discount those experiences, because what I hear a lot from team members are, you know what, if I stopped and really thought about my RFP response, I could have really talked about the other ways that I would have solved this problem that might differentiate you from someone else. So, you know, never sell yourself short by only doing that one sentence reply. Be full in what you do and your experiences, and bring them at every aspect. So I think for me, that's been a success when I step into new roles, and I hope that's something that all of you are doing as you do your work.
Hope, what are the possible factors related to women businesses that you have seen that are successful? What are some of those factors? Because we've talked a little bit about your pathway, your road. So you've seen successes.
Yes.
But you've experienced some not so successful. I hate to use the word failure, because I think that failure means you quit. And obviously the fact that you're here tells us you're far from quitting. So they've been successful. Talk about that a little bit.
So, you know, I actually want to talk about a story of a successful business
Love stories.
owner. And I think it speaks to the way women are able to pivot with respect to business. That's one of the things I've seen women do very quickly. This doesn't work, okay, we're going to do something else. So there was a woman who had a cleaning company, and she had women who cleaned residences and commercial offices in New York City. And one of the things that she observed was that some of her clients would get outside vendors to clean carpets. And she thought, well, and they pay a lot of money to get those carpets cleaned. And so she started to rent carpet cleaning equipment and provide that service through her company. And she grew that business, that part of her business, so quickly that she started to finance the equipment and build an inventory of equipment. She is now in the equipment leasing business. And so that is an example of someone who saw an opportunity, she was able to access the capital and build that component of her business. I think that's a really good example of, you know, how a woman would think about expanding a product line.
It seems that the thread through all of this is one of the major factors apparently is first finding your niche. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. You know, and there's an assumption that you bring certain credibility, that you bring certain talent and experience, but it's not always a given that you're going to be successful at it if your heart's not in it. And I hear that as one of the themes that keeps running through. Doreen, New York State is proud to certify minority women businesses, many of which are small women-owned firms, as a strong woman leader in your own varying industries. If there's one aspect of the conversation that you'd like small business and women-owned businesses to take away, what would that be?
Sure, yeah, at NYSERDA, I actually was looking at our metrics for last year alone. So we've contracted with over 70 minority and women-owned businesses last year. And when I think about what constitutes success or how one achieves success, I think there's two factors that I consider. One is relationships. And that has really become a hallmark, really, of how I think about achieving success. It requires some effort to develop relationships with people, but ultimately, people respond to people that they know, that they understand, and that they trust. So aside from the official paperwork and the official applications and RFP responses, I would strongly recommend that you work to develop relationships with the people with whom you want to work. And I will tell you, I'm sure I speak for all of us here, we want to know. We want to talk to people so that we understand better how to do our work. So if someone reaches out to me, I always respond because I want to learn just like you want to learn, and I want to get to know you and your specific needs as well. I would say that the second is persistence. And by persistence, I mean, just as my fellow panelists have indicated, you know, you don't always win the first time, but there are a multitude of growing, significant opportunities here in New York and here at our respective agencies. And fundamentally, it takes hard work. You have to read the contract reporter, right? You have to look at our website. You have to try to match what you have to offer with what we are seeking, and you have to know the people that you're going to be working with in that undertaking. But ultimately, the opportunities are truly endless. Where you are and where we want to be are so aligned that, as far as I can tell, those two preconditions will bring you success ultimately.
I've got two questions, and the clock continues to tick, and we want to stay within our time frame. But there's a couple questions that I really need to have explored, and I'll throw it out there, and whoever wants to tackle it, I'll just leave it open. As we continue to navigate the COVID-19 pandemic, obstacles for small businesses like MWBEs are more real than ever. What are some best practices that you would share with MWBEs to let them know that we're there to help, but the things that they would need to know to navigate these hardships and work within your agency?
I'd like to just quickly say, you know, with the COVID-19 pandemic, there have been a lot of programs that have been rolled out to support small businesses. And one of the things I think businesses have realized is that they really need to be able to have their infrastructure in place. So need to be able to produce financial reports very quickly, need to be able to produce business documents to access these programs. And in our case at ESD, we had a $800 million small business grant recovery program. And in order to access that program, you needed this documentation. And so I think from a best practices perspective, businesses have figured out that they need this infrastructure to be able to access resources.
Anyone else want
Oh,
to
absolutely.
take a stab at that?
And sort of in that note, unfortunately, there are some bureaucratic things you have to do, and you don't want to lose out on a contract because your information isn't up to date. You know, very simple things, right? If we have a contract out there where we need to have design services, if your profile isn't up to date, you know, maybe you're starting to use, rather than your office phone because you're flexible, you know, it's going to someone's cell phone. Is your team member actually picking it up? Are they watching their emails? How does it actually work when you're in a hybrid environment or if you transition remote? That is one of the worst things that could happen because of, you know, challenges in the pandemic. And unfortunately, this pandemic just continues to roll on. So you're going to want to make sure that you are really doubling back to make sure when we call you for opportunity that you respond. And I think a large part of it also is just to be communicative, right? We know that costs are going up. We know that commodities are going up. We know that there are pressures. So when you have issues that you're coming across, don't just come with, oh, there's an issue. You know, have some detail around it. Speak to your agency when there are challenges that are being presented, and then also be realistic, right? And so, you know, these are the things that are going to be very important as you win awards also when you're experiencing issues. I just heard about the cost of paper going up. You know, add that on top of the cost of gas and other things. So, but again, these are things where be thoughtful, be flexible, and over-communication is more than fine, you know, especially in a time like this.
Doreen, tackle this one for me.
All right.
Black and Latinx women and small business owners have been disproportionately impacted by COVID-19, but there's been less attention on the huge spike in new business this past year, particularly in the e-commerce sector. According to a University of Maryland survey of about 1,200 women-owned businesses, nearly half of these new businesses started during the pandemic were started by women of color. They were more than twice as likely to have started their own business out of economy of need. What are some resources offered through your agency to empower women in their businesses?
Sure, yes. One major aspect of the investments we're making at NYSERDA and across the state are associated with workforce development. We recognize we are building a brand new industry here in our state, and we want very much New Yorkers to benefit from it, and certainly all New Yorkers in that respect as well. So, when we actually are leveraging about $120 million now for workforce development as an example. And when we build programs like our on-the-job training program, like our internships, like our various community-based organization training programs and the like, we do so with a very deliberate eye toward reaching directly into the community and directly into organizations like those you just described. It is true, we have to do our work differently to access these new businesses, and fundamentally, that's what we've done in building programs that really start with direct engagement with interested parties to benefit from those investments.
As your final question for each of you, and sort of summarize in your closing remarks. It's flashing that our time is up, so are they going to pull the mic? Well, just quickly, sum it up by saying what existing or potential challenges inhibit business and organizations in trying to achieve their goals and objectives?
You know, there are so many at this time. You know, with COVID-19, we've got supply chain issues, we've got rising prices. I think that if I could leave something with this audience, I would say, if I were a woman-owned business, I would definitely try to find myself a trusted advisor. You know, and you can do that by checking in with local community development organizations that are focused on providing support. CDFIs will do that. I see Valerie White here from LISC, a plethora of resources to be able to provide support to businesses.
Jeanette?
I would say be tenacious at this moment. You know, I think that failures happen. I've failed many times. You know, pick yourself up and you move on to the next piece and you learn from it. So, you know, just keep going after that work, and it is available. If it doesn't happen this year, it's going to be the next. So, you know, get that experience under your belt, keep networking, and just keep at it. We're here to support you, and we certainly want to increase our MWBE participation. It's something we're committed to. Doreen.
Yeah, certainly, as I said, the time is right. All the preconditions exist for success for these new critical market entrants, as I like to think about them. We have federal alignment with our state. We have policies and programs to benefit minority and women-owned businesses. Fundamentally, there is a bit of a time challenge. I would agree with my fellow panelists. You have to be persistent and a little bit patient, but really you're in the right place at the right time, and that's how I think about it. I look forward with great optimism, in fact.
I would like to thank our panel, and I would ask you to give them an applause. Come on, you can do better. And I thank you for being, you know, such a good audience. And this is one of the quietest rooms I've worked in a long time. So I hope that that meant that what we had to say was important to you, that it was captivating, but more importantly, that it was informative. Thank you again, and good morning.